Hello everyone, Ken here, your Thrifty Apprentice. Happy Friday everyone, and welcome back to another Inktober sketch. Today we are tackling day number 6, which is golden. And for this composition, I decided to take it back over to the fish realm because I had so much fun sketching the betta fish for our last video that I decided for golden I would do a goldfish because they are golden. So I started out by sketching out a quick illustration. I kind of wanted to give this feel of a shot of a goldfish up close inside the bowl. So I was sure to throw a couple of grasses in the background. Now, in this composition, I will not be using standard black fine liners for any of the inking, but I will be using ink soluble products, so ink water soluble products, excuse me. So we still have an all-inclusive Inktober drawing here. So I'm starting out with ink tints pencils, which you guys are going to see quite a bit throughout the month, and I am using two colors. I'm actually using a green and a blue. So I put down a base color with the green, and then I use the blue for the shadow color, and then I take that same green and color over the blue. That way I can turn it a deeper saturated tone, shade, should I say, of that particular green color that I was using. And it's a wonderful way to add shadow to a color, especially when you're working with a limited number of pencils. Now my ink tints pencil set is only 12 pencils. So I do have to come up with different ways and different variations in order to get the tones and shades that I want when it comes to a color. Now, I've been using these for quite some time. I've never done a review on them. I don't think I have. But without a doubt, they are probably one of the most versatile products that I have in my arsenal. I love the fact that when they dry down, they basically become immovable. So you can glaze and paint on top of them and be pretty confident that your bottom layer is gonna stay put. I want a bigger set. There's no doubt about it. I want a much bigger set of the ink tints pencils because I just find them really great to use. So with those two colors on the grass, I took a water brush and I blended them in. Now when it comes to watercolor pencils of any type, I will typically use a water brush when I'm working with them. That continuous feed of water helps with dispersing the pigment, on top of the fact that most water brushes have those nylon heads, and those bristles are just hard enough to kind of push those pigments around and disperse them. Although you don't have much of an issue when it comes to using the ink tints pencils, because the ink pigments or the ink particles that disperse into the water soluble effect do it very, very easily. Here you see that I'm just adding more tone and more color to the grass, and I'm using a technique that you guys have seen me start to use quite a lot lately, and that's to take that abrased palette and use it to scribble the pencil lead out on, because you can add water to it and make washes and make basically paint. And I've done that in order to go in and start painting in the goldfish here. So I, watered down some yellow lead, and then I mixed some yellow with a brownish tone. I cannot remember what that is called. I think it's called brick. I mix those together in order to get the orange, and I'm just going back and forth with basing in the body of the fish, really watery layer, and then I actually wet the fin with that same color, and I'm using a technique where I use the ink tints pencil directly on wet paper. That's going to make harder lines, and it's going to make more saturated lines that stay put in place even more, and it's going to leave a lot of saturated color. And I'm just going back and forth with mixing colors together, mixing tones together in order to shade the goldfish so that it would definitely look round. It would have body. And I wanted to give the illusion that it kind of shined when water hit it. So I am definitely playing with my shadows and my highlights, trying to keep the shadows sharp enough to give off that shiny effect when compared to the highlights, but soft enough to still blend in and make a unified, nice looking composition overall. This was actually more work than the beta fish was, if the truth be told, because you're trying to pour off that tone and that effect. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't really happy with the way the head of the fish came out. I really do feel like maybe in retrospect, now that I'm looking back and doing the voiceover, I could have pushed the head of the fish a little bit further. But for all intents purposes, it's going to turn out to be a pretty decent composition at the end, I do believe. Now, I used a black Inktense pencil in order to add the eyeball to the eye socket of the fish. And then a little later on, I'm going to be taking that darker orange tone that you see me using now to outline everything. I'm going to be taking it and I'll be adding a circle around the eye itself, just so it'll look like that particular portion of the fish's face, the eye will be raised from the head. But you guys, that's what I was doing right here. Just because that's sort of how it looks to me when you look at a goldfish. Now, I wasn't using a reference photo when I was doing this. I was actually just kind of painting from, I found oh, what was that? Outline, that's what I'm trying to say, on Google, and I kind of sketched it out onto my scratch paper, which will be available on Patreon to download for traceable for my Patreon users. And that's how I used it to transfer it into my Inktober sketchbook here, because I do consider these sketches versus being paintings. Now, what I have done at this point is I pulled out my Master's Touch Fine Art Studio metallic watercolor paints, and I'm mixing colors that resemble my yellows and my oranges and my browns into them in order to give a little sheen to the paint. And that's what I'm using to paint in the actual scales, and to kind of go in and hit and miss here and there inside the tails. Now, the tails, of course, are supposed to be sort of transparent looking, so I was trying to keep it that way, try not to make them too opaque while still adding the detail that I wanted to, convey or get across in the composition. I'm splattering in the background because ultimately this is a underwater scene, and I just kind of wanted to have some of the different colors that I was using throughout the composition splattered throughout the background. Now I'm going to put water in, of course, but those colors would be reflecting in the water. And then I just kind of wanted to look like maybe there were, how when you're looking at fish tanks, sometimes there are kind of things floating around, kind of reflecting color. So I was trying to emulate that too. And it was really easy to do with just splattering paint. Now, I mixed up the darker tone of green, which was the lighter green that I used in the blue. And that's how I made the dark green to go in and enhance the shadows a little bit more. I just wanted to add a little bit more saturation to things, give it a little bit more body, put shadows in where the grass would be folding and turning and twisting, so that you could see the effect fully that of the grass kind of waving in the water. That was what I was hoping to convey with this. And then I also, touched up the base layer of green a little bit more too, just to bring that color vibrancy up. Now, although I do like the paper that I made this sketchbook out of, it's a really thin mixed media paper, so, the paper does warp a little bit when you're using a lot of water on it. And this particular one will have quite a bit of water in comparison to the previous sketches that we've already covered for Inktober. Here I'm using the Jane Davenport Mermaid markers, which is of course a water-soluble ink. And that's what I'm using to put the water and then the sunlight that's kind of shining through the bowl into the water. And I just made washes of two of the colors from those markers. I gave that time to dry, and it was time to move in and go ahead and put in the bubbles. I wanted to look like, the fish was breathing. We did kind of over enhance the gills of the fish so that you would be able to see those. So I felt like, you should be able to, man, I should have given him a nose. I just thought about it. But guys, there you go. If you decide to do this composition, don't forget to give him a little nose. We'll pretend there's one there. So I just used the ink tints pencils in order to do those bubbles, and I was sure to drop watery washes or dots of the color from across the composition in the bubbles because they would be reflecting the same colors. I moved in with some Prismacolor pencils. Now, the purpose of the Prismacolor pencils here is really just to enhance the dark saturated tones. Again, I have found that my style involves, light highlights and heavy shadows. And I really like the way it makes my artwork look, and I'm starting to incorporate that. I feel like that kind of speaks to who I am as an artist. And I also feel like it causes for some really dynamic compositions and illustrations and sketches. All right, guys, if you saw anything you like, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe if you're new to the channel, or if you're returning and you haven't subscribed. Be sure to hit the notification bell. You can check out the video description for all of the relevant links. That's going to give you the Facebook, Patreon, and Etsy in case you would like to support the channel, as well as the most recommended product list. And remember, as I always tell you at the end of every single video, just keep painting and crafting.